What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel. My name is Tyler Plath, and we are back with the second edition of the Monday Waiver Wire Ads series after a wild week 2 where we saw thrillers, we saw comebacks, we saw blowouts, we saw teams that underperformed and underwhelmed, we saw teams that really began to hit their stride, and so much more. This week was way more crazy and exciting than week 1 was. And as we get more and more weeks like this, make sure you're subscribed and that you have notifications turned on to be alerted whenever we post, because we are posting every single day, breaking down everything that happens so you have an edge over your league mates. But we're also posting to help you optimize your team with waiver wire videos like this, with buy low, sell high videos that we post on Wednesdays, and starts of the week videos that we post on Fridays, and then we give you podcast episodes in between all of those, as well as shorts that are just minute-long videos. So again, all the content for you to build the best team possible. So again, make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on. All right, on to these waiver ads, and all the guys on this list, except for 2, are rostered on average in less than 50% of leagues, and we just took the average roster percentage between ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper. So there's a good chance that these guys are available in your leagues. First guy we'll talk about is rostered in more than 50% of leagues on average, but we have to mention him because this is the last week to add Rams running back Kyren Williams. Jay Glazer reported before the first slate of games on Sunday that Cam Akers would be deactivated, and that coaches believe he's on the trade block and could be traded. And Cam Akers himself even tweeted, "I'm just as confused as everybody else." So Akers is not coming back, meaning this backfield is all Kyren Williams. And after his week 2 performance, there's no excuses anymore as to why he's not on a roster. 6 receptions on 10 targets for 48 yards and a touchdown, along with 52 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. That's 4 touchdowns total on the year, and we're not going to see this kind of touchdown production as we get further on into the season, because averaging 2 touchdowns a game is pretty unrealistic. But the point of having a lead back with almost all the work, there's no reason why he shouldn't be on a roster. So again, he's the guy now. And if he is on your waivers, go at him immediately, because this Rams offense is also looking a lot better than a lot of people expected, which helps Kyren Williams. So again, make sure he's not on waivers after this week, because he deserves a roster spot. Next is Colts running back Zack Moss, and in his first game since returning from his arm injury, he got 18 carries for 88 yards, a rushing touchdown, as well as 4 receptions for 19 yards. He's the bell cow back, very similar to Kyren Williams. This backfield belongs to Zack Moss, and Deion Jackson and Jake Funk, who were also active in week 2 for the Colts, they did not get a touch. They didn't even get a target either in the passing game. So when I say this backfield is all Zack Moss, I mean it. It is all Zack Moss. Now, Anthony Richardson did leave the game early with a concussion, so we still have to see what things will look like when the two play together, because, well, we've seen Anthony Richardson so far through, I'll say, 5 quarters of football, he's going to be productive with his legs. So we still have to see what that tandem will look like, but the point of having a bell cow back on your team is crucial to building the best team possible in fantasy football. Matt Breida is next on our waiver list, and it is a debate as to how much of a priority Matt Breida is, because it is dependent on Saquon Barkley's status. But even if we want to classify picking up Matt Breida as risky for whatever reason you can come up with, it's worth taking the risk. Now, for the most obvious statement of the century, Matt Breida is not the same kind of runner that Saquon Barkley is. So we can't necessarily expect a 1-for-1 when it comes to rushing volume, but what Saquon Barkley and Matt Breida have in common is that they are solid in the receiving game. And you more than likely won't be starting Matt Breida next week because they take on the Niners. And I know the Niners just gave up 28 fantasy points to Kyren Williams, but very different situation between the teams, very different environment because, again, it's a divisional matchup between the Rams and the Niners, et cetera, et cetera. I could keep going on that, but this is the lead back now until Saquon Barkley comes back. So there's still value here. Now for some wide receivers, starting with Lions wide receiver Josh Reynolds, who put up 23.5 fantasy points after scoring twice against the Seahawks. And I'm going to get real for a second. The rapport that Jared Goff and Josh Reynolds have is very evident. They trust each other a ton. And with all the reports that we got during training camp about how Jameson Williams was struggling, the inconsistency he showed, along with missing the first 6 games this year, after missing a ton of time last year as a rookie, Jameson Williams is behind the 8 ball. And the question of, does Josh Reynolds stay as the wide receiver 2 even when Jameson Williams comes back? That question is much more of a realistic possibility than it was at the beginning of the season. How about Tutu Atwell? Am I right? He showed that week 1 wasn't a fluke by putting up 7 receptions on 9 targets for 77 yards against the 49ers. And the production that we're seeing probably has a dwindling shelf life because we're getting closer and closer to the minimum time that Cooper Kupp is inactive. And my prediction is that Tutu Atwell takes more of a backseat once Cooper Kupp returns. That's also very, very reasonable and very, very obvious in my opinion. But here's why Tutu Atwell is still worth the ad. Because there's no guarantee that Cooper Kupp comes back in a couple weeks. So as long as he's inactive, Tutu Atwell is still going to have a decent role opposite Puka Nacua. He's a wide receiver 2 in this offense. It's not Van Jefferson. Tyler Higbee kind of sprinkles in some kind of, production here and there. But it is really Puka, Tutu Atwell, and Kyren Williams and Matt Stafford that are running the show in Los Angeles. The 6th guy on our list is Texans wide receiver Tank Dell, and I will admit, Tank Dell is really, really nice with it. He is. He is savvy. He is quick. We knew that coming out of the draft. My concern was just that his size was really going to limit him, in terms of what he can do in a role. And he's kind of proving me wrong at the moment. Noah Brown was put on IR last week, and it then was reported that Tank Dell was going to see an expanded role because of that. And yeah, that role expanded quite a bit. He went for 7 receptions on 10 targets for 72 yards and a tutty. The Texans will be playing from behind in most of their games, just like they have been the past 2 weeks against Baltimore and Indianapolis. And in both of those games, CJ Stroud has thrown the ball at least 44 times. So there's plenty of targets to go around. And that bodes well for Tank Dell. And that's why he should find his way onto fantasy rosters after this week, because if the Texans continue to throw the ball this much, eventually Tank Dell is going to get productive with whatever kind of targets he gets. And as I said earlier, when you are a savvy, quick route runner like Tank Dell, CJ Stroud is going to find you early and find you often, because CJ Stroud is just going to be looking for whoever's open. Next guy I'm going to talk about is Ravens running back Justice Hill. Now, his situation isn't as ideal, let's call it, as a Zack Moss or Kyren Williams, because he's not the lone back. He's not the lead back. But what he does have is the better offense in comparison to the other 2 guys. And we saw how this backfield in Baltimore is going to operate moving forward without J.K. Dobbins. And it's, really to no surprise, it's a split backfield between Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. And Gus Edwards could also be an ad and spoiler. He's an honorable mention just only because he didn't meet the criteria of the 50%. But the takeaway with Justice Hill is that he's the passing down back. So splitting the carries with receptions, I should say it like this, with receiving work, you sprinkle in a touchdown every now and then, and you're looking at a flex play some weeks. I'll say it. You're looking at a flex play in some weeks. Couple more guys here, starting with Bears running back Roschon Johnson. Week 1 didn't carry over 1-for-1 into week 2 as Tampa dominated the time of possession. So rushing opportunities were few and scarce for not just Roschon Johnson, but Khalil Herbert as well. But there were still some encouraging signs when it comes to the outlook of Roschon Johnson. First, D'Onta Foreman, he was a healthy scratch, meaning Roschon's role is expanding, and he's more than capable of handling that expanded role. I mean, we saw that in week 1 when he logged a rushing touchdown as well as 6 receptions on 7 targets. And the Bears, here's the other encouraging sign, the Bears may start relying on the run more often moving forward, because in my opinion at least, Justin Fields has not been passing the eye test when it comes to being a passer. Everyone thought that Justin Fields was going to take a step forward, and he still could take a step forward, don't get me wrong. But when you compare what we've seen the first 2 weeks of the Justin Fields the thrower compared to last year, there's not a whole lot that's different. His quarterback rating through the first 2 games, just between the average between the two, 69.6. Nice. So again, an expanding role for Roschon Johnson because D'Onta Foreman has been a healthy scratch at least once now, with more opportunities coming down the road because Roschon Johnson is a rookie. You're not going to give the entire workload to a rookie unless your name is Bijan Robinson. It's worth adding Roschon now before it's too late. If you're looking for a tight end this week, Zach Ertz is your guy. He's had 6 receptions in both games this year, and he's gotten at least 8 targets in those games as well. Now, this is being recorded before Monday Night Football, so there's still 4 tight ends that still have to play between Hayden Hurst, Juwan Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, David Njoku. But there's a very good chance that Zach Ertz finishes as a top 12 tight end again for the second straight week. Look, the Cardinals are matched up against the Cowboys next week. And if the Cardinals want to have any shot of keeping it close with Dallas, they'll need to keep feeding their guys. Keep feeding James Conner. Keep feeding Zach Ertz. Keep feeding Marquise Brown. Zach Ertz is your classic box scorer guy. And we've talked about guys like this before where you don't want to watch because it's ugly, it's not going to be pretty at all. But you know he's got a big role in the offense because you can go look at the box score and go, wow, he's got 10 targets. Wow, he's got 6 receptions. And the last guy on our list is Packers quarterback Jordan Love, and who, as a Vikings fan, I don't really want to talk about Jordan Love, but we need to because he's thrown 3 touchdowns in both games this year, and he looks very comfortable running the show. And I did not see that coming. I thought filling the shoes of Aaron Rodgers was going to be a little too big of an ask for Jordan Love, and so far he's been handling it. I know that they're 1-1 and that they just lost to Atlanta, but 3 touchdowns per game is no joke. The Packers have been able to spread the ball around. You know, we see success with guys like Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed this past week against Atlanta. And he hasn't had Christian Watson in either game. So once Christian Watson and Aaron Jones, for that matter, come back from their injuries, we'll be seeing the best situation for Jordan Love. And because of that, I don't want to admit it, but Green Bay is going to be competitive in a lot of games. And because of that, we will probably keep seeing solid fantasy production from Jordan Love. That'll do it for our waiver wire ads for week 3 and a quick recap of the 10 guys we discussed. Kyren Williams, if he's still available. Zack Moss, Matt Breida, Josh Reynolds, Tutu Atwell, Tank Dell, Justice Hill, Roschon Johnson, Zach Ertz, and Jordan Love. 2 quick honorable mentions for you. Gus Edwards, who I brought up earlier when I was talking about Justice Hill, he's going to get work. Again, 6 yards per carry against the Bengals and a goal line score. That can be valuable to somebody. And Robert Woods, now you don't really want to be rostering multiple Texans wide receivers because the Texans are not really going to be, winning a whole lot of games. But when Robert Woods has been putting up 19 targets through 2 games this year, it's at least something to keep tabs on because plenty of opportunity there. So thanks for tuning in and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you in our next podcast episode, which should be coming out tomorrow, where we discuss the biggest fantasy football takeaways from week 2. And then Cam will be back bringing you another buy low, sell high video. So be sure to tune in when those come out. As I said, thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one. Deuces.